right, so I'm on the phone with Paul. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hey, I'm Paul Schwarzkopf. I'm the primary drummer in a band called Ice Climber, and I also make electronic music as manual control.
Awesome, perfect. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about when music came into your life. Describe for me the environment and situation you were in when you first realized that music was going to be a larger part of your life.
Oh yeah, that's crazy because I remember it like so it was probably like 25 years ago plus, but I remember like it was yesterday. I was just kind of learning the drums, and I was at a my parents' friend's house, and I couldn't play the drums at all hardly. I could play like just a basic beat, like boom ching, boom ching. That was about it. So it was very, very new and not very good. But I was at this person's house, and one of the kids that was there was like 19. I was like 12. So this is like a god to me, like 19-year-old teenagers, like, hey, I play guitar, man. I heard you play drums. There's some set up in the basement. You want to go jam? And I'm like, I'm terrible. You don't want to jam with me? Like, you have no idea. I'm 12. I don't really play the drums. It just started. He's like, no, man, come on down. Let's go see what happens. And so I get down there. I'm like, frozen. I can barely even move. And he's like, just give me whatever you got. And I'm like, I only know how to make one beat, just a boom, ching, boom, ching. So I do that. I start up that. And then he comes in with just like a thunderous guitar riff out of this humongous amp. And it's just, shakes the whole room. And I'm like, my whole body, like every nerve in my body, like became electrified. And it was like one of the greatest feelings I've ever felt. And that was like the first time I ever played music with somebody. And I've been just chasing that feeling ever since, pretty much.
So what got you into the drums in the first place?
So I was like a young kid with a lot of spastic energy. And my mom one day was just like, we got to do something with this. So she just signed me up for drum lessons. And I'm like, I don't want to play the drums. I don't want to be, music was like just kind of it wasn't a passion of mine. I wasn't really, I thought music was fine. But I just wasn't really into it. And then I started just learning the drums. And then eventually, like, I think when it became a passion or when it became really super interested in me is, so I was in musicals a lot. I was like singing and dancing and one of those guys. And in like middle school and then in high school, I tried to get into like the fancy, what they called show choir, was like did musicals and they traveled around and stuff. But I couldn't get in because A, I was a spaz, and B, I couldn't really sing and I couldn't really dance. So I got nixed, man, and all my friends were in this thing, right? And so like I was just like, what am I going to do? And I kind of been learning the drums, but I wasn't like taking it seriously. And then their drummer dropped out from the show choir musical thing, and they were like, and then I like auditioned, and I just tried to like learn it as quickly as possible. I found a tape of like what it was supposed to sound like, started teaching myself as much as I could, and then it became kind of like, oh shit, this is like a thing I'm gonna do now, and it became kind of like a passion.
Suddenly you're an actual drummer.
Yeah, so I was an actual drummer. Like I had to play. The first thing I had to play was like, this is the first real thing I had to play was West Side Story, and that's like I don't know, it's like weird jazz, and like I had to pick it up pretty quick. But it kind of like I kind of became obsessed with it. Like I'm gonna learn how to do this.
Sure. So you mentioned that once you started playing with other people, you kind of got that bug set into you to kind of chase that however you could. How did you chase it? Did you start looking for other bands to join, or did you kind of start writing your own stuff? What was the next step after that?
Yeah, I mean, I was a drummer, so I definitely didn't know how to write music at that time. I'd say I kind of started getting serious about it. Like in college, I would try to find kind of the most serious band. I would try to it was Craigslist days. Like, hunting down Craigslist posts, man. And I wasn't like in the scene or anything. I didn't even know what the scene was. This is back in Milwaukee. And there wasn't much of a scene anyway, but I didn't even know how to find it regardless. And so I just started like answering Craigslist ads. And I played with everything, man. I played with a rap rock group. I played with a post-punk group. I played with a heavy metal band, a blues band. I did like gigs where I would go to, for the summer, I'd go to like some resort and play in like a kind of like a musical band or a jazz band depending on the night. And so I just kind of like started just drumming wherever I could, I wanted to be, this is back when bands got signed. This is like the early 2000s. So I was like, oh, I'm going to get in a band. I'm going to get signed. And that never, of course, happened because it just doesn't usually happen. But I just started seeking out every opportunity I could to play the drums and learn music and just like play different styles of music, play with new people, just keep going.
Okay, so you mentioned that along the line there, you did start writing your own music. So what was kind of the motivation to do that?
Yeah, so I was about like 25, 26. It was about like the mid 2000s. No, late 2000s. probably 2008. And I was in this band, and we just made an album. It was like an alternative rock band, kind of, sort of like sounding like Faith No More. And I was just drumming in it. And then they broke up, and we just made this album, and it took all this time. And then like the band just fell apart. And this was like, I don't know how many bands in a row this was. Like this is like 6 in a row. It just fell apart like at some point when we were just getting going. And I got tired of it. And I was just like, I have to, as a drummer, I can't just like take my songs and like find new members, you know? So I was just like, I just start from scratch every time. For some reason, that's how it always happens. So I was just like, I just got tired of it. So I'm like, well, I was already into electronic music. I had been for a long time. And so I was like, well, what if I just started to kind of write my own stuff and do it all myself? Because like with electronic music, you can do that, luckily. The problem was that I didn't realize that you have to know, well, you don't have to. The music that I wanted to create was like heavily melodic and harmonic, etc., and kind of complex. And I didn't realize that, like, to make electronic music, you still, to make that kind of stuff, you still need to know music. So then I had to go down that long, just a drum. Like, I could do the drums, but like a part, and even programming drums is way different than playing the drums. So I had to go down that long, long road of learning how music works, audio, electronics, programming drums, all that, computers, all that good stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
So we'll go on a little tangent here because I'm curious how you do it, because I'm going to guess a similar thing. Tell me your process for recording or / programming drums for the songs that you make.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. That's a cool idea. I think it kind of varies. I mean, I generally, as the drummer, like I have my little thing that I write, and I usually have a pretty solid idea as I'm writing it, or if I'm using a sample or something like that, what I want the beat to be. I already have I think it's from just kind of having to come up with something like right away. I already have like, it's almost instantaneous, like what the beat that I want to put to it. It very rarely changes. Like I'm like, the song is this, the beat is that, etc. So then I kind of go about it. Sometimes, because I do it, I use drum machines to make my drums, and then I use samples, and then I use chopped up breaks, and then I use live drums. So like those are my 4 techniques. And so then I kind of decide for that song which one would fit the best, because I feel like for certain songs, like some songs, if it's kind of jazzy, then break beats are awesome. If a song is like a little more live sounding and a little more like rock or energetic, then I feel like live drums are good for that. So I kind of like listen to what the song needs and then kind of decide which drum method I want to use.
So when you're committing to a drum part and you found a part that you want, do you actually go through and program note for note on the MIDI roll, or do you do like the easy drummer thing where you kind of plug in the vibe that you're going for and let the VST make the beat?
Oh yeah, as a drummer, man, I can't do the VST route. I gotta have it like exactly the way I have it in my head. So it's there was a song I did. It was like a really kind of breakbeaty, jungly drum and bass thing, like drum and bass jazz, kind of like Square Pusher, if you've ever heard that crazy guy. But I went through, like I took a drum break. I think there were 5 parts to it. It's like from the 70s or something, like a funk break, and then I broke it up into all these little pieces, and then. Like by pieces, I mean like little phrases. And then I put all those phrases into a sampler, and then, like programmed every note. And then sometimes I wanted the hit to be like a slightly different pitch or a little longer decay. And so that thing took me forever. So I'm definitely like super duper hands-on in my like drum programming. almost like too, like, why does it matter that much? Like I spend too much time on it sometimes.
So I imagine you're still doing your own solo music, but tell me about what other projects you're involved in.
Oh yeah. So I drum in, I'm the primary drummer in a kind of a musical collective called Ice Climber. And it's like a psychedelic acid rock band, I think, acid punk, acid rock band. And so it began, it began as like a fluke. There was just some musicians that got together. Sochi de la Luna, who's kind of really big in the music scene in Minneapolis around here, kind of is one of the founding members that's kind of got the group going. But it began as just an improv group. it'd be 3 years ago in a couple weeks here. So we started 3 years ago. And I just sort of hopped on the drums as a fluke because they were doing ambient drone music. And then it was like, I answered a post that I thought they were looking for opening acts, but they were actually looking for musicians. And so they found out I played drums, and I'm like, well, you don't want me to play drums over ambient music. Like usually that stuff doesn't have drums. But they're like, yeah, come on over. And they had a gig at White Squirrel. And I sat on the drums, and they made this like, there's a bunch of people on stage, like, I don't know, 7 or 8, all different instruments. And they made this wall of sound. And I just started like doing like ridiculous jazz fills over it. And it was kind of reminded me of that moment like I had when I first played the drums back in that basement. And it was just like, I had never done anything like this ever. Like I always am a very kind of like, what's the part? Let's practice. Let's get it this way and that way. But I never just kind of like went up there and just riffed. And it was so fun. And so we have been playing ever since. We now have songs, and we just did our first full-length album back in December.
Awesome. So you were able to get into the studio, and it sounds like the entire thing started with kind of a live performance. So tell me kind of what is in the projection for that? Where do you see that project going?
That's a good question. I don't really know. The nice thing about being the drummer, and it's a musical collective, so there's oftentimes shows that I don't even play, but I'm just kind of the primary person if it's for certain things. But the nice thing about being the drummer is like I'm just along for the ride, and I've really learned to, especially with my own project, like I'm used to being in control and like, oh, we got to do this or we got to do that. And it's kind of nice sometimes to just be like, I don't know where we're going, but I'm along for the ride. Like the people are just such fantastic people to play with. I love Ice Climber very much. And I just like wherever they go, unless it's like, which I can't imagine happening unless it's in like some disastrous direction. Like as long as it's good vibes and we're making weird music, I'm in.
And do you kind of have that same vibe for your own music? Do you ever want to see that get like a live performance and put a lineup together for it?
Yeah, so I do. I've been performing live pretty much since I started with electronic music. I do it with all hardware, which is kind of fun. I try not to. I like to challenge myself by not bringing a computer on stage, just because I like the limitations of like, here is the instruments you have. It's probably going back to drums. Like when you're behind a drum set, those are the sounds you have. You make do with what you got. And so I like the idea of bringing out some synthesizers, drum machines, samplers, etc., and like just a couple of them. Well, sometimes a couple, sometimes a lot. But like, and those are your instruments. Those are your sounds. Now go. So I've been doing that for a while. And yeah, I don't really have what was the question? I forgot.
that kind of answered it. You do have an ambition for it, and you have a thing that you're doing live. That's awesome.
Yeah, and what I realized is like when I was younger, I had all these plans like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to produce this, I'm going to make this album, and then this is going to happen. And like maybe your experience has been different, or maybe other people's experience has been different. But like anything, just things don't ever seem to turn out like the way you envisioned them. So like I just stopped trying to imagine what's going to happen. Like let's just continue to work and make stuff and do things, and just like whatever happens. I don't know. Maybe that's the lazy man's route, but like I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be. No matter how I try to conjure it up, it doesn't really. I end up where I am anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So share with me a couple of memories that have happened to you that have kept you motivated to continue to make music.
Oh man, that's a cool one. This is a kind of a cool thing I did. It stands out in my mind just because I don't really know why. Just because it was different. There's this thing called the Hennepin Street Performers thing. It happens in the summertime, but you can sign up to play on the street of downtown Minneapolis, and they pay you, which is cool. Which is really cool and rare. And so that was a neat thing. I signed up to just like make electronic music on the street, and I didn't expect them to take me. But I was like, they're like, yeah, go for it. And so at a bus stop in the summertime once, I brought some gear down and an amplifier and made like weird, like kind of jazzy, electronic, dancey-ish music at a bus stop. And there was like people waiting at the bus stop, like dancing and grooving. And it was just, I'm like, I can't believe this is happening right now. And that was pretty cool. That was one that stands out. No.
All right. So where can people find your projects and then follow along with them?
If you Google manual controller music, all the stuff should show up. I'm on if you have any of the streaming services, Spotify, etc. I'm on there as well. Just look up manual controller. That's where you'll find all that good stuff. The Bandcamp, all those things. Heck, Google will be your friend. Luckily, it might have a kind of a weird name, and there's not a you won't get a lot of cross, pollination, cross pollination. I'm pretty much the only one out there, the only manual controller. And then Ice Climber should have an album that we're doing a CD or album release for here in just a couple of weeks, beginning of February. And I think that'll be available in all the places. And then they're making tapes and stuff.
All right, cool. So I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last words. So what's a message that you have that you want to share with other people?
Let's see. I imagine if anyone's listening to this, they're probably a musician. So I kind of think of like some musical advice that I kind of think about a lot, that I tell myself anyway, which I find helpful, is to just keep going. Like I think it's sometimes easy to get disheartened, or like this person is doing it better, or this band is bigger, or this person's playing a better show, or whatever. But like, to me, like just the fact that I'm able to do this at all, and perform and meet people and talk to people and share art with each other is just fantastic. So my advice or my words of whatever is just keep going. Like, let's just keep making stuff and keep connecting with each other.